Welcome to Scale Her Up, the show for female business owners and leaders who want to grow profitable, sustainable businesses without burning out. I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, a business growth specialist helping women develop themselves and their businesses so they can achieve their goals and enjoy the lifestyle they dream of. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring stories, honest conversations, and practical strategies to help you start, grow, or scale your business. If you're new here, hit follow so you don't miss an episode and come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community to keep the conversation going. So today I'm really pleased. I've known my guest here for a few years now, Carnie of PWS. I'm so delighted to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we'll start off with an introduction to the business. PWS, what is it that you do there?
So it's now known as PWS, but it started off as power washer services. It was started by my dad 42 years ago. And initially he started off and it was just power washers. So he was a dairyman on the farm and they weren't actually such a thing then. But there was a wee he saw a niche in the market when he got made redundant from the farm and just landed on his feet with it and started and learnt as he went along. And here we are 42 years down the line, and it's so much more than power washers. So although we're still Power Washer Services Limited, we're known as PWS because there's so much more than power washers. So we sell equipment and we have a team of engineers to maintain it. And we cover all of Scotland doing that. And there's 28 of us altogether.
Awesome. As well as power washers, what other kind of equipment are you selling and maintaining?
So it quickly became apparent my dad's sort of target market was farming because that's what he knew. So power washers were very new. And then once he started introducing power washers to the farmers, obviously it was a big time saver for them. It then became clear that a lot of the equipment that they used on the farm, such as air compressors, generators, space heaters, they all had all this type of equipment as well. And it was a case of, if you're looking after my power washer, can you look after my compressor and things like that? So he had to learn as he went along, but he was very mechanically minded and just developed it from there. So it's just been added on as the years have gone on.
It's a sensible business model, actually. If you've already got the customer and you're selling them that, then what else could you provide for that customer that you don't have to go out and find a new customer?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When did you come into the business then?
So I joined my dad, and it was 1980 he started, and I joined with him in 1990. So accidentally, in fact. I'd been away, left home when I was 17 and joined the Air Force. So I'd been away from home a long time and then found myself needing to come back home for various reasons, ended up back home. I was actually in the police at the time down in England. And my plan was just to get myself sorted back home, do a refresher at Tully Island, and then that would be me sorted in the police here. But in the meantime, my dad said, come and give me a hand. And so I did. And here we are. So that was 1990. So it's quite scary actually, because, how long that is now. But yeah, and I never looked back. So here we are.
Coming from the Air Force and the police into business, what did you take from that what were the transferable skills from one to the other?
I'd had quite a varied job because when I was in the Air Force, I actually worked with the RAF police dogs. So that was a very manual, physical job. But then in the police, obviously, I learned a lot of a bit of confidence and dealing with people, having to deal with people all the time. So then I found myself going out on the road working with my dad selling. For a start, I hadn't got a clue what a power washer was. And the area I'd been 17 when I'd left home, didn't drive, so didn't really know very much further than sort of Montrose and Edsall and Lornskirt roundabout when I was brought up. So that was all new as well, getting to know the logistics of finding where places were. But no, I enjoyed going out and meeting people and speaking to them. And I think with the police, it was all we were dealing with the not so nice side of yes, you would deal with a lot of helping a lot of people who needed help, but it made me think that people wanted to speak to you. They wanted to learn. They wanted to know about what you were selling. And I think because I was a woman in a man's world, really, in one way it was a bit more difficult, but in other ways, I think there was a curiosity there as to what does this I think I was quite young then, what this young lass knows about power washers. Let's try and test her. So I think the skills of dealing with people and thinking on your feet, you had to do a lot of that in the police. That really helped me when people put me on the spot. But I think the satisfaction of actually selling some products and doing that and with a smile on my dad's face and seeing that I was helping was really good. But at that point, I still thought, I'll just do this for a wee while and then I'll go back. And then I'm not really sure what happened. I didn't really actually make a decision not to do it. It just went along. But I had absolutely no idea about business. And in fact, when I was at school, I absolutely hated secretarial work, and sitting down at a typewriter was just not my idea of what I would ever be doing. So it was quite a shock, actually, to find a few years later, after being out on the road, I then had to combine it with the office work and tried to learn how to run the business. But it was small enough back then that you had the time to do that. You had the time to grow with it. There was only my dad and I at the time. Yeah, but I learned an awful lot very quickly then.
It is a steep learning curve coming into business, isn't it? From wherever you come. Yeah. Yeah. I guess your dad will have had that as well, coming from the farm to starting his own business.
Yes, they were self-employed through the farm. So he had an idea about the bookkeeping side of it. But back then, there was no computers. It was all just a couple of big accounts books that you kept manually, and all the invoices were handwritten. Yeah, it was a challenge. When you look back now and you think what we have to run a business now, it's actually quite scary to think that you could possibly do it without even phones and things like that.
You've just taken me back to an image of from my childhood called trying to balance the VAT. So my dad was a farmer, and obviously that side of things not his preferred skill set. And us as kids with the calculator going down the page and trying to work out where the gaps are. Yeah. Getting shouted at when we're not getting it right. And yeah. Thank goodness for computers and spreadsheets.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. From just you and your dad in 1990 to now 28 staff and more family members as well involved in the business. Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of happened. When it was just my dad and I, and then he worked away himself. He did a bit of repairing, did a bit of selling. When it was quieter, he went out and did a bit more selling and just built it that way. And then once I introduced more customers and we were getting a bit busier, it became apparent very quickly that he wasn't going to be able to keep with the repairs. He was already working most evenings and most of the weekends. So we made the decision to take on an engineer. It was a local lad that my dad knew, and he basically trained him. It's a difficult industry. There was you couldn't send people away to get trained anywhere. There wasn't an apprenticeship you could do. He learned as he was going along, and then he just passed his skills on. So the young lad, Ian, came with us. That was our first engineer. And then it got a bit busier, and I spent more time in the office then, because then we had to try and keep up with that, and I had to try and learn how to do it all. Then we took on somebody else to help in the office, more sales. So it just gradually grew. Back before, you got a couple of engineers on, and then suddenly you need somebody else in the office. And looking back now, it's quite scary really to think that, but you either go with it or you don't. And we found that what we were trying to do was not only sell the products, but do the backup service, which was missing. In our industry, Aberdeen was booming. There were people coming from down south, not only central Scotland selling the equipment, but from down in England. People were coming to Aberdeen all the time selling equipment. And that was the easy bit, but they weren't looking after it and they weren't willing to send people up here. That took a long time really made a decision to take on looking after other people's machines. We could have said, look, no, if we've not sold it, we're not looking after it. But we decided that we could see that there was a wee growth niche there. So
an opportunity there,
an opportunity. So we did that. And that stood us really well, because then you looked after the machines for a few years. And when it came to replacing the machines, they realized the value in having somebody on the end of the phone to come and fix it. Mm-hmm. And going back initially, it wasn't really that important, because they were still classed really as a kind of luxury item. Even when you think back to the farmers, the tractors, all the equipment was so much smaller, and people are still washing them, with a brush and a sponge and a hose pipe. But if you bring that forward to now and you look at the equipment that they're doing now, it would be an impossible task really. So yes, that was something that we realized that was going to do good for us, and it always has. And even now we still do that. We like to think that there's not many companies that are like us who are providing that backup service. And that's why we have so many engineers out on the road.
So how many of that 28 staff are out on the road, engineers?
So between 8 and 10 vans, most of them are out every day. We've got 3 full-time engineers in the workshop as well. So local people are bringing their machines to be fixed. They'll PDI new machines, get hire machines ready. They're busy there all the time. And because we fix lots of other brands, there's a fair chance that when the engineer does turn up, he might not have the parts for it. So it's then a case of bringing it back to the workshop and ordering parts. So that works well, doing that. And if people are stuck, we can usually give them a loan of a machine to keep them going. So they're happy to give us a machine until we get bits organised.
I'm thinking about what you were saying about the people skills that you learned in the police. I and you related that to sales, but actually to managing people as well. As that team, I mean, if you just was the two of you and then you're building up, how was it just a case of learning on the job how to be a manager, how to be a leader?
Yeah, so that came much later because I suppose didn't really class ourselves as managers. We all worked together. It was when I look back now, but then HR rules were different back then. I suppose it was a long time really before I actually got round to thinking that I need to do some courses and do some learning. But I've always wanted to learn. I've always read a lot of business books, self-help books, and done some courses. And I think looking back now, actually learning how to use the accounts package and do the spreadsheets was actually the easy part. But yeah, I think the more you have different staff, the more it makes you realise that yes, you need to be a manager because they're not all the same. They don't all have the same needs, and you need to treat them all differently. And I think that's a difficult thing to do. I've always felt that if you can get the best out of people, then you're doing something right. We don't have a big turnover of staff, which I think says quite a lot. We've got people that we've got an engineer that's been with us. He's now an associate director. He's been with us 24 years. Some of the mechanics have been with us a long time. We're teaching them skills that to us, it's invaluable because we've never ever managed to employ anybody who has those skills already.
Okay, so you
They
train
have equipment. They might be mechanically minded. They maybe have worked on maybe one or two of the might work in engines or pumps or things to bring them on and teach them. It's a big thing. So it's not a massive industry, but we do have competitors out there and we are aware of that. So yeah, I think if you can manage them and learn, and that's something that I'm trying to pass on to the next generation, is that for them, ideally for the service manager, he would like to be able to look at the list of the engineers and look at the list of today's jobs and just pick any one of them to go to any of the jobs. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. There's a lot of managing involved there, which he's now learning. It's people have skills and you have to work with them. So yeah, there's a lot to being a manager.
So I'm just thinking about when you're recruiting, if nobody has the full skill set that you're looking for, what do you hire on?
So certainly on the engineer, on the service engineer side of it, just really a good knowledge of working with their hands, working with tools. Sometimes you can tell by their hobbies. My brother usually handles that side of things. I've not actually mentioned him, but yeah.
I was going to
together. He kind of handles that side of it. But yeah, he didn't really have any of those skills either, but he was very good with his hands. He works on cars. So if they've got hobbies like that and they like doing that, but there's a lot of diagnostics still involved in our side of the industry, which everything's going electronic, but a lot of our equipment isn't. It's still very manual, still very mechanical, but you have to plug it in and get it going and see what it's doing or what it's not doing and work from there, which is not something that everybody can do. Sometimes we've got it wrong. Sometimes people have come to us and it hasn't worked out. And I'm not saying we've taken on the right people all of the time, but if they're willing to learn and to listen, and we'd send them out with one of the other engineers or have them in the workshop for a while, and we just give them, we don't put a time scale on it. Somebody can come to us and they can, after 3 months, they can be out in the van on their own, doing basic jobs. For others, it's 6 or 8 months, maybe longer. You just have to go with it. But yeah, it's just finding, and we've found that people from an agricultural background have actually worked well with us because that's the kind of customers a lot of the time we're dealing with.
There's a real problem-solving mindset that comes from agriculture, isn't it? Because they're not just cattlemen or tractormen. They definitely have to be engineering, and something breaks down in the middle of the harvest, you just have to get it fixed any way you can, don't you? So
that's right. And I think they have that. I think the problem that's coming now is that all the tractors and all the machinery is technical and electronic now, that where you can't do anything without plugging a computer in, same with your car. But we've not gone there yet. We do have some of the equipment where we can give them the high tech for the companies that do want that. They can have the high tech stuff that goes with it. We can have it as an add-on, which is fine. So we have the options. In our industry, what we find is that the people that are using a lot of this equipment, they don't have degrees in technology and whatever. They just want it to be simple. Switch it on here, do that, and keep it basic.
Tell me, so you mentioned your brother there. Yeah, real family business. There's some other, did you say that you've got nephews or something involved as well?
Yes, I have, yeah. So Jim joined the company and we both became partners in 1999, along with my dad. So the three of us have always been partners. But yeah, Jim came then. So he initially went out on the road and learned to be an engineer. So that gave him a good grounding there. But his 3 children all work in the business. So we've got Rebecca, who's in the office, and then we've got 2 boys, Kevin and Nick. So they've worked their way. They were both service engineers as well. And they are now associate directors, and Nick runs all the service engineers. And Kevin does a lot of the technical stuff. So he'll go out and do site surveys as well and deciding what equipment people need, measuring up for things and doing all the technical side of it. And she went to the post office actually, and worked in the post office for quite a few years and then came to us. She has a really good overall grounding, which is good. And she's working her way up through the office and doing really well. So I'm really proud of them all. And I mustn't forget my son. I've got my youngest son, Callum. He's in the workshop, just been for a year. So he was in the oil industry and went away traveling and came back and wasn't really sure what we were going to do. Rather than him not doing anything, I said, come on, I've got a job for you. And he's really enjoying it. I think in the oil industry, you were just a number. You didn't really know what you were doing. You were just fixing a little bit of something that was like somebody else did the next bit and the next bit. And he finds it quite rewarding, I think, to work in the workshop and actually get to fix something and see the good of it. Yeah, they're all good.
So in terms of the family business, how do you, because I can imagine for people that haven't worked with family, they'll be like, where are the boundaries? How do you have to be really clear on the boundaries? You're not going to be talking business around the Christmas turkey, or how do you, and if there are disagreements, how do you handle that when you're also family?
I think, yeah, you have to be realistic because, yeah, we do have disagreements. And I think over the years, we've all learned to cope with it better. But, sometimes you just have to, you have an idea, the rest don't agree with it. But in the end, you come up with it. I'm not sure how we get there sometimes, but sometimes there's a wee bit of a blowout and then it all calms down and we all chat about it. But no, we don't tend to. We're saying that we do. We're going out for a meal with suppliers and people like that, and you end up talking business. But yeah, we tend to not always be talking business, but we do try now more to have like meetings and get the next generation involved as well, so that we can try and help them learn a bit more about the business. It's a really difficult one because we just kind of learned as we went along, but now for them, it's a much bigger thing to be dealing with, really, to try and hand it over. But we get them involved in like quarterly management meetings with the accountant and things like that. So they're starting to understand a bit better about it because they just see the sort of the job's getting done, the money coming in, but they don't see all the costs involved, things like that. So we're getting them more involved with that. But yeah, you don't want to. The problem is that they're all busy doing their day-to-day job, which is obviously what we found before. You're trying to do all the managerial stuff and do your day-to-day work, but we're gradually handing things over. I'm getting better. But no, sometimes we do have disagreements and we just have to talk it through and come to some sort of settlement. Yeah.
Good. So what about Liz then? What have you learned about yourself over the years in business?
Oh, goodness. I think confidence-wise, I never was a very confident person, which was hard to believe because when I did my police training and they used to video us, and they used to say I used to come across very confident, but inside I was like the duck on the water with the legs going like belly underneath. And I think I'm still like that now. But I think I've tried to learn and grow and do things for myself to try and help with that. And BNI is one of the things, joining a business group and becoming part of that helped me enormously with just having a bit more confidence and learning to deal with people. But I think it's not an easy, when you have to have difficult conversations, I think it's not an easy thing to be able to do. But I think just life experience maybe helps you with that. When I think back maybe 10 years ago, having a conversation with people that wasn't going to be a good conversation, I would lose sleep for days about it. But now I'm more tend to grab the real by the horns and say, what do I need to deal with? Let's deal with it now, and then not stress about it. Yeah, I've learned that making lists is very good for me. I always have a list on the go. But they often get longer quicker than they get shorter, but I do like a list, and I like the feeling of getting through your to-do list. But I've also learned to deal with those things that you don't really want to do first, and that makes for a much, much easier day, I think.
We call that eating the frog.
Eating the frog, yes. Yeah. Yes, I've heard that expression before.
The worst thing you've got to do today is to eat a live frog. Get it done now and out of the way.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Liz, is the business and life. Sometimes life takes a side sweep, and that makes it really difficult to continue focusing on business. And when you're an owner, when you're a partner of the business, that can make it really difficult. And you had a situation like that, didn't you?
Yeah. In 2020, my partner Colin was diagnosed with cancer. So actually, we just moved house in January. COVID had just hit. He had this on with cough, and then got diagnosed just after, I think May it was, after COVID had hit. So now Colin worked with us in the business. He worked in the stores. He was a storeman. Obviously, everybody was very conscious about looking out for people, and he was having chemotherapy. Yeah, it was a really difficult time. So I ended up working from home quite a lot, which in one way was good because I got to spend a lot of time with him. But we spent a lot of time running up and down to 9 Wells for treatment. So cough now.
I'm thinking it's even difficult in a business where a team member's going through that and how that impacts the other team members as well, doesn't it? And never mind that it's your partner and how that's impacting you and your family. A lot of your family are involved in the business. Must have been a really difficult time.
It was difficult. And then we'd already had to furlough quite a lot of the staff. So a lot of them were home. Initially, I was at the office all the time. And then it became apparent that it was going on a bit longer, COVID. So we had everybody back by September. The girls all came back, and then I found myself at home because obviously I couldn't be around people. But it made me realise what good support I did have there. And sometimes I think it was tragic what happened. Colin went through a lot of treatment. But because I wasn't there, it was difficult because I was always there. I was always in the office. People pop through and ask questions, and you pop through. And suddenly, although you were contacting each other and speaking on the phone, and it was a really difficult time, but it made me realise just how important and what a good job everybody did there without me being in the office. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. You go on holiday for a couple of weeks, you come back when there's a big pile on your desk that you deal with, and that's fine, and away you go again. But to suddenly not be there for a long period of time, it made you realise that, yes, you've got to hand things over, you've got to trust people to do things. And that was probably the start of making things easier for me to try and hand things over. But yeah, it was a good while that I was out. And Zoom calls were all the thing then. But yeah, I did feel a bit isolated and cut off from the business. But on the other hand, I could see it was running fine. Everything was fine. And we were probably busier than ever, really, once COVID, because a lot of the industry that we were dealing with were still working. So there wasn't the break like a lot of people had. But yeah, when you've got somebody, we actually had taken on another storeman actually just before Colin was diagnosed. He'd started, and the idea was that he was going to work with Colin, but then all of a sudden Colin wasn't there. He got thrown at the deep end as well, trying to learn the whole job. And then that also makes you appreciate that when there's only one person doing a job, it's not ideal when they're not there.
And it's a really important role that's central to a lot of a business. It doesn't sound like much of a role, to be honest, but when you think about how logistically they're a centerpiece of a business like yours. Yeah,
absolutely. And he worked between the parts that the guys needed to do their job. That was important that Colin knew what to order, but also customers coming to him on the phone, order parts to be posted or sent or delivered. And then suddenly there was no handover. It was just a case of, here's this young lad and he's still there. So we go on fine to try and pick up all the pieces. So I think that's made us realise as well that even with the office, when the girls are away on holiday now, somebody else can do maybe not all of their job, part of it. So we're much better at that. It's made us realise that that's important as well. Take that stress away because you know yourself I know from when I was doing kind of all the jobs, albeit a lot smaller, you came back, all the jobs were still there. It's nice to come back now and find it that you don't. So maybe it made me appreciate, yes, it did make me appreciate that how important that was to try and learn and get everybody to learn parts of other people's jobs. And yeah, and the unfortunate thing is we ended up losing Colin, albeit a couple of years later. But then there was another time where for almost a year, Colin and I were basically traveling the world, ticking off bucket list things because we knew he wasn't going to make it. In that respect, because we had implemented all these new things, it worked. I could do that. So I was so lucky to be able to do that.
It's something that we talk about a lot within ActionCOACH, actually, is helping our clients to create a business that works without them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've just given us the terrible, though, but very clear example of why that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for the loss and everything. It's really tough for anyone, cancer, and the people that are affected. That I'm actually on the board of the Business Beats Cancer Aberdeen. We raise funds for Cancer Research UK. So that I've also lost some friends. Yeah, I know it's impacts so many of us. So it's
I think that there's nobody to speak to who doesn't know somebody who's dealing with or has dealt with cancer. And in fact, I've just been part of a group that were away on a curling trip, but we raised £8,000 between us for breast cancer now before we went. And actually, I've taken part in a competition this weekend, which is Stand Up to Cancer. So we can support it where you can. I think it's just such a shame that there's so much money being raised and we're still having to deal with it, but it's just part of everybody's life. And some are lucky, and Colin was just unfortunate that the treatment that he had didn't work for him. Whereas there's lots of positive stories as well.
Absolutely.
So I see that as well.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the business chat then, Joyce. Joyce is somebody I was talking to earlier on. Liz. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. It's written. The notes from her coaching session are on my pad of paper here, and you're on the other side. Yes, Liz. What was I going to ask you? Yeah. What advice would you have for the listeners, women that are thinking of starting or scaling their businesses?
I think there's always pros and cons. But for me, if you'd have said to me when I was younger that I'd be running my own business one day, I would have probably been quite shocked by that. But it is fantastic. The satisfaction that you get, and it's the will, the want to do things. There's a completely different feeling. Whatever job I've had, I've always tried my best. I've always worked hard. And in my own business, it's just been the same. But you do have that flexibility. Although I have a bit more flexibility now, but there was a lot when my children were growing up. I feel that a lot of the time I missed out on things because I couldn't get away, I couldn't give up the time. Whereas I appreciate that now. And for the next generation, I can see that they've got young families as well. And I don't really want them to do that. You have to do that. So there is that as well. And you can work it round. You work as hard as you want and you get out of it what you put into it, I think. But I would say, yes, if you've got that mindset, and there's so much help out there, I think, now for people starting businesses. But I didn't necessarily know about it or get help. Looking back now, yes, I wish I had. But no, I would say go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? It doesn't work out. And then you go back to doing what you were doing before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's lots of help out there. My thing would be ask for help if you need help, because very few people, or if practically nobody, will say no when you're looking. Can you help me with this? Would you be able to advise me? How did these? Nobody says
no. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think when I look back, I think I probably classed asking for help as a bit of a kind of failure. And looking back now, I probably spent so many hours muddling away trying to do something instead of getting some help and get it done quicker and learn it quicker. But maybe a bit of a stubborn streak there as well.
I think everybody who's a bit entrepreneurial's got a stubborn streak, probably.
Oh,
yeah, because you have to have that determination, don't you? That to keep going through, because there are tough times as well. Yeah. So I'm running out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. I've talked to you so much that you're losing your voice there. So thank you so much for being on Scale Her Up. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything you would like to add to the conversation?
I don't think so. No, I just think maybe going back to BNI. I joined BNI 11 years ago now, and that's been fantastic for me. Give me the confidence, help me with not just standing and speaking, but asking for help. Yeah, I think that's one thing I would recommend. And if it's not BNI, there's lots of other business networking and help groups out there. So I think, get the help. I'll probably covered that already, but yeah.
No, I like that. You're not alone. It can feel like you're alone.
Yes.
But you're not, are you? Yeah.
Sometimes you just need somebody to throw some ideas at and get some conversation back and spark some ideas, and away you go.
Surround yourself with the right people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant message to end on. Thank you very much, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let me just find my outro. Here we go. Only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female, and men are 5 times more likely to scale past £1 million in turnover than women are. If we match them, we'd add 250 billion to the UK economy and create millions of jobs. That's why Scale Her Up exists, to change those numbers one business at a time. Thanks for listening today. If this episode helped you, please follow the show, leave a review and share it with another female business owner who needs to hear it. Join our Scale Her Up Facebook community and connect with me, Brenda Hector, on social media. I love hearing which episodes resonate with you. You're capable of more than you think. Keep going. We're scaling up together.